Hello, hello. How is everybody doing this Wednesday night? I'm so used to saying Tuesday because Tuesday is my typical night that I come on live. But it's Wednesday tonight. Yesterday I just needed a little bit of a break, so I took it. And I think we all are deserving of a little bit of breaks nowadays. So tonight I want to talk about 3 exercises. Actually, it's going to be 4 that you can do at home to strengthen your body so you can hip hinge better and make it farther down those downhills. I know that a lot of us, including me in different times, have gone down downhills and we've fatigued out. We've had to do the little sit down on the bike in those like little flatter sections and then pop back up for the next rootier section. And kind of a little bit frustrating. You're like, I just want to be strong so I can make it down these downhills and have so much fun. And so a lot of times we can strengthen off the bike to help us for on the bike stuff. What we're going to talk about first is a little bit about the basic positioning of it, because I think this matters a lot when it comes to, are you stressing your knees? Are you using your hips right? Are you stressing your back? And that can play a huge role into if you're going to last for the downhills or if you're not. And also if you're going to stress something, make something hurt. I know a couple of gals said that they had some knee pain when they would go downhill. So let's talk a little bit about that. So I brought my bike up here. Hopefully I don't bust ass because I'm trying to balance on a little bit of a bucket. So we'll see and make sure hopefully I don't fall over. So first thing when we talk about positioning on the bike out of the saddle is that we can have our saddle up if we're not going actually downhill and we're more on level ground. However, if you are going down, it's much better either if you have a dropper post to drop it like I just did, or get off your bike and lower your saddle if possible. Because you're not going to be able to get in these positions that you need to get into with your saddle up. And otherwise it can be scary. It can also make it where the bike's going to hit your butt, make that not feel so happy. And so just lower the saddle, get it out of the way. Make it not a thing. So now that we're talking about going downhill, and whenever we are getting ready for those next routes, a lot of times for Pemba, it's called the ready position. And so we want to get low. Your chin's going to be over your stem, just like I'm sure a lot of you guys have talked about. And you want to think about bending a lot of the different joints. So you're going to bend at your ankles, you're going to bend at your knees, your hips, your elbows are going to be bent, and you're going to be bent over. And so you're nice and centered on the bike. Now, with this, we have a nice full range that we can go through here. And so if I suck down lower under the bike, then I'm going to be a lower center of gravity. Just like if I'm going to be down here, if I'm going to be down here, it's harder for someone to push me over versus if I'm up here. So if you lower your center of gravity, you make yourself more stable. Somebody can't push you over. They can't like give a lot of force on you. And so it makes you feel more cozy, makes you feel more comfortable. And that's why you can move the bike around you a whole lot better. However, you don't always need to stay there. If I lived here, you think my body would be too stoked with me? I go walk it around. Like, it's not the best thing for all of me. And so same thing on your bike. You don't always need to be tucked down and in the lowest position that you can possibly be in on the bike as you're going downhill. You see how much more stress that puts through my knees? It makes me super tucked up and it's harder to move the bike sometimes. And so you want to make sure that you're varied between here and here, depending on what terrain you're in. So that brings in another thing. So, well, Liz, how do I know if I need to tuck in, or how do I know if I need to stay more open? That comes through practice and also going through and talking to different skills coaches. Practice. Vary the terrain. The more that you can be up and out of that position, then I can be more here. And this is a ready state for me. This is also like whenever they're teaching basketball or teaching ready so you can slide to side real quick, then you can use all your muscles really nice. It's not going to super fatigue you out. And so one of the tips that I want to talk to you guys about is if you are super tucked and down, you're going to fatigue out quicker. But if you vary between those, depending on what the terrain is, depending on what you're riding, then you're going to last for longer. So if I go from here and I don't just stay here to do everything, and I stand up every once in a while, walk around, and then I go back down, I'm going to last a whole lot longer than if I tried to just tuck and say just hovered above that lowest position. Does this make sense to you guys? There's a lot going on here. Do you guys think that you stay in that lowest position, or do you try to get up and out of it and move more? Let me know if you guys are moving more or if you're staying like super down into it. So whenever we're going in through these ranges, we still have to be strong in certain areas. This can lead, if you don't stay strong in these other areas, aka our core, aka our glutes, and our hammies, then we're going to start stressing other regions. Those regions are going to be a little bit of our back, even more of our quads than what should be working, because we are going to work our quads when we go downhill. However, a lot of us tend to work our quads a little bit more than what we need to, especially in the downhill. We need to go in and think about the deadlift. We need to go in and think about our hip hinge. And hip hinge is a really nice way of thinking about it. Does anybody understand actually what a hip hinge is? When I was first taught hip hinge, I was like, what are you talking about? You hinge at your hips. Perfect. What does that actually mean? Well, think about a hip hinge. So if we have a bar and we think about an axis of rotation. So axis of rotation basically means that things rotate around a central point. And so if we have a central point going through our hips that things can rotate around, then that means that our hip joints have the main source, the main things that have movement through them. The other parts around them have more stability. They're trying to be nice and safe and controlled through that. And so understanding actually how to move in hip hinge is one of the key components of being able to be strong through that downhill. And that's what we're going to tease out more today, of how you stay strong through that. How you understand how to use your body. Because when you're going downhill, there's a ton of other stuff that you're going to have to be looking at. A ton of other stuff you're going to have to be thinking about. And I don't need to be thinking about everything about my body and what the hell I'm feeling. I need it to be going pretty good. Like, I need to think about like where I need to move. But do I need to think like, is my abs on all the way? Am I using my butt? Am I using this? Am I using that? Is my hamstrings working? Or do I need to be thinking about like, where's my next line going to be? What's happening down the trail? Am I staying centered? Or do I feel like I'm falling off the back of the bike and the bike's like rolling without me? Anybody else feel like that sometimes? Man, I hate when I get in that back seat. It sucks. I'm like fighting to get back up forward into the centered position. Really big thing that I've been working on. But I digress. Carrie says she moves around a lot, but it's a harder trail that she's never done. She stays too low and for too long. Yeah, it happens to everybody, Carrie. And I think that's whenever you start really stressing out those knees and you start stressing out your back a little bit more. It's hard to get up and get out. And whenever you are a little bit farther up, Julie makes a good point of this, that it's more comfortable to stay low on the hard trail. And that's true. Because you're lowering your center of gravity, you're making it where the trail has less effect on you. It's like if you're like teeter-totter, you're a tall person, you're going to get pushed over a little bit easier than the small person. They can ground themselves a little bit better. However, it just is really fatiguing. And so knowing to drift in and out in certain times is super important. And then also knowing and staying strong within your core, glutes, hammies, and quads, and feeling stable on that base. So the first exercise and the first thing we're going to talk about is what I call lumbopelvic dysfunction or disassociation. And it's where you have no clue actually what the hell's happening through this region of your body. And you'd be surprised how many people have this. How many people have no clue what the hell is happening to their pelvis, to their lumbar, to their low back, and to their hips. They think they're moving one place, but actually they're moving a completely different place. It's one thing that I work with a lot of clients about, because they're like, oh, Liz, I got hurt deadlifting. Oh, Liz, I got hurt doing that exercise. I don't ever want to do that again. I'm like, that's an important move that you should know how to do, because you have to build on it. And that's where your strength is going to come from. So that all comes in with a lot of nerves. That all comes in with how you perceive your body. So whenever I say perceive your body, I'm talking about what we call proprioception. It's basically like, how do you know where you are in space? So without looking at my elbow over here, I know it's bent. And I know it's bent to about 90 degrees. Yeah. And then whenever I have it like this, I know it's straight. It's because I have receptors and other things in my arm that tell my brain what's going on with it, what's happening to it, without me actually knowing, without me actually having to look with my eyes into what's happening here. We have them in our muscles, we have them in our ligaments, we have them in our joints, all these different receptors that send messages up to our brain and say my elbow is bent, my elbow is straight. Now, for elbows, it's easier to determine. We have a little bit more understanding of what our elbows and what our arms are doing in space. Here, if you've had a C-section, if you've had low back pain, if you've had pelvic floor dysfunction, if you've had hip pain, if you've had issues in this region of your body, tightness, then you start losing that sensory connection, that those receptors start sending wrong information up, and hence lumbopelvic dysfunction or disassociation. You're disassociated. You don't know what the hell is happening. And so that's where I'd like to start for today. Do you know what the hell is happening to your ass, to your butt? Where is it? And so what I want you to try is just think about like a bee stinger coming off your butt, and you're going to point that bee stinger down. And then you're going to point that bee stinger up. And I want you to see if you know where the mid-range is. And so where you have just a little bit of a sag in your back. It's not here, it's not down all the way, it's that mid-grade. And so I'm looking for that mid-grade right here. First, before you do anything else, you have to understand where that middle grade is. Because if you don't, then there's no way that whenever you start to do a hip hinge, that you're not going to do this. And if we then load that pattern, your back will start to hurt. Or you'll just use your back muscles and you won't use your butt, you'll use your quads, and you won't get the benefit out of the exercises that you actually need. So, hands and knees, find your middle ground. Then, this is the first exercise, you are going to shift back enough where you can offload your arms. And see how my back is still nice and flat. Now I'm loaded into my hips. My feet are nice and free. Weights on my knees. And then I can come back down and forward. So I find my middle ground. I shift back just enough where I can offload my hands. So I'm still pretty horizontal with my body. That's what makes these muscles have to work. So the main load is being held through my glutes. This is just a stabilizer off from it. One other thing that you can do is use my nice little pole here. So I find my middle ground. I feel how that feels. It touches my head, my middle back, or like upper back, and my butt. And as I come back, I can raise up, and I keep all of those points. And so I come back and raise up, and I keep my points of contact. And that's how I know that I'm not here, because I lose my points of contact with my butt, and I'm not here because I lose my point of contact with my mid-back. And that's how it helps you know whether or not you're actually hip hinging or if you're just stressing your back. Because before you can strengthen, you need endurance. Before you get endurance, you have to have motor control. You have to know what it feels like. You have to know how to activate it. And those things are key. Like, those are so key within strength training. If you don't know how to feel what's going on, you don't know how to use your motor control, then you can't get endurance. You can't get strength. It's just not going to happen. You're going to be stuck in this rat race of thinking that you're getting stronger, and it's not actually applying for you. So that's first exercise, is finding that point. So you make it aware that you can use your hip hinge. You know how to load it. You know how to offload your hands. Because I know that everybody has heard, or most people have heard, be light on your hands. How the hell do you be light on your hands? This is how. You put load in through your hips. You know how to control through here and here. Now, if you're doing this and you drop so far back that you put pressure through your feet and your quads are on, it's not what we're looking for. Your feet should be nice and floaty. Be nice and even. And so find your middle, shift back, and hold. Now the second exercise builds on this one, okay? So you're going to take your weight. This is just a little 2-pounder, and I just want you to do a little arm movement. This is not to do an arm exercise. It's to make your trunk work for rotational stability. And so now you're working on that endurance. The first exercise made you know motor control, how to actually activate it. Now we're working endurance of here, your glutes, and this shouldn't hurt your back. You should know it's working, but it shouldn't cause pain. This should load your glutes a whole lot. Make your core work a ton, including your back core, because core is everything that wraps around. It's like a big cylinder. And you shouldn't feel any pressure in your pelvic floor as you're doing this. It shouldn't bulge out. It should be nice and even and soft, okay? So don't let that pelvic floor bulge out as you're doing this either, okay? So you're gonna shift back, you find your spot, and then you just go side to side. This is you working endurance, rotational stability, because you have to hold against this weight, and you are staying nice and still. That's easy. You bump it up a little bit. If you don't have a weight, a gallon jug of water works perfect. This is what I have in all my programs, because pretty much everybody has a gallon jug of water around. This is 8 pounds. If you want less, you just empty it, okay? So about 5 pounds is just a little over half. So same thing, you're weighted in, keeping horizontal, and then you're just shifting side to side with this. And it really has to work with this, okay? One of the reasons why I chose to teach you the hip hinge on your knees first is because we took your knees and your ankles out of it, okay? Now your base of support are your knees. You don't have much else to balance on except for the use of your hips, your core. That's it. So it has to work. These have to do your things for you, okay? Now, for your third and fourth exercise, it's going to be a similar thing as this, but we're moving you up. We're making it more complicated because riding a bike is more complicated. You don't put your knees on the pedal, you put your feet on there, okay? So now we stand up. And so then what you're doing now, you use your same dowel rod. And so my feet are going to be nice and even stance for this guy for right now, okay? You're going to use your same dowel rod. You're going to think about the same things that you were thinking before. Your chest is going to go down. You're going to hip hinge, okay? And so you can see the axis of rotation goes through here. As you can see, my knees are nice and soft. As I'm doing this, I'm not squatting into it. I'm just moving more so through here than anywhere else. My knees are actually shifting back with me as to not bend them more. Because if I kept my knees in the same place, then I would have to bend them. So they move with me, okay? This is the base premise of a good morning, of a deadlift. Like, this is it. This hip hinge is like the main thing to think about with it. If you can do this hip hinge, then you can deadlift and you can start getting even yet stronger than what I'm even going to teach you here. These are base things, okay? But to me, these base things are if the other stuff is going to matter. Otherwise, you're just going to get stuck. You're going to get hurt. Your back's going to not feel good. You're not going to feel controlled. Like, these are the things. Motor control first. Feeling what you need to actually do. What is your stability like? What muscles are you using? Then you go endurance. Then you go strength. It's hard to go those things otherwise. Now, I know we're leaving off some big pieces of not talking about flexibility, like range of motion. Can your hips actually move like this? You know, like we're leaving off some other pieces here that we'll talk about another day. But these main pieces, motor control, endurance, and strength, is key for a lot of different exercises, a lot of different movement patterns. So, first exercise up here, again, is just actually going in here. Do you know what this feels like? This becomes your motor control exercise again. Okay? You're just going to go back and forth within it. Then, we load it. Take your gallon jug of water, and you come down, and you hold that position, okay? Now, several of you are going to feel like your hamstrings are really tight in this position. It's because they are. You only have so much range of motion whenever your pelvis goes and bends forward, aka you hinge at your hips, and your knees are just soft. If I bent my knees more, I can bend over more. Hence why you saw me like almost horizontal with my back on the bike, yet that's as far as I can go here because my hamstrings, I feel the tightness in them. That's the end of my range. It's okay. Sometimes we need to stretch the hamstrings because we need a little bit more range. But don't try to force more range if you don't have it. Because you know what's going to happen is that you have a stopping point. Your hamstrings attached to like your sit bones. You know, like you sit on somebody and they're like, oh, your butt's so bony. That's your sit bone, okay? And so they attach there. So if I can't move any more distance between here and here, then I fold. If I'm trying to get down there to the floor to get whatever I need, I have to fold. I have to use here as my next range of motion output. So that's why I want you to start holding it. Don't start with it on the floor. I don't need you to pick it up from the floor. Start holding it. Go through your motion. Hang out there. And then you're going to do the same movement. And it's going to make you have to work even harder. Once you have that down, then you stagger stance. And you go down through this movement. Now you're going to feel the difference of whether or not you're weighting front foot, back foot, and how you can vary and center yourself through these positions and maintain that forward trajectory of your body. You want to shift over to one side. So if I'm here staggered, I want to maintain this straight body as I move this jug of water to the side. And guys, like this is hard. Like this really makes you work. And I'm using an 8-pound jug of water. Like it really makes you work. So to wrap it all up, we are going through, you did hip hinge from your knees, finding it first, shifting into it, offloading your hands. Then you added in the weight for exercise number 2. Then we brought you up to standing. First you did even stance, hip hinge forward, just getting in that movement with your broomstick. Then we added in our weight that we held, rotational support stability, maintaining straight. Then we stagger stanced you and brought you into that same thing. And you could feel the difference of those feet. Like these are all super important. These are all working how you are so supposed to support yourself. Like this is mountain biking, guys. Like this is your downhill position. What's stopping you from working on it off the bike to help you have more fun on it? Like if you have this going for you, if you have this support structure here, you can think about all the rest of the shit you need to think about and have more fun on the ride. Like, that's what's key. Erin says, are you externally rotating your femurs as well? Not really. They're kind of staying in line. I'm definitely not letting them fold in. That's a good point and something to bring up, is that whenever you're in this position here, I'm not letting my knees come in. It's harder to hip hinge and you won't actually go down that far. And so you're more likely to externally rotate, or if I had laser pointers off my knees, you're more likely to point those laser pointers out a little bit or keep them just straight is what I want. I don't want you way far out. I don't want you in for sure. Because if I'm in, then like that's as far as I go. You just mechanically, your hips won't bend as much. So you're more likely to go out. But good point for bringing that up. Michelle's, oh my gosh, this is so great. I'm excited to work on these. Yes, and take them to the trail. Yeah. Suzanne says, love that staggered stance, right on. It's so great. Sarah says, seriously can't wait. Do you need a staggered stance with each foot forward? Yes. I'm all about being balanced. Now, on the trail, we're definitely more confident, in more control if we have one foot forward versus the other. But I like for you to feel balanced and work on both sides and understand the feeling of both sides. You'll probably find that one side's a little bit weaker. Work on that side a little bit more. We need to bring it up to the level of the other one. It'll help prevent other issues happening up the chain and down the chain too, aka to your back, hips, or to your knees or your ankles. We covered a lot, but I loved it. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Like, you have control, then you apply it, like your motor control, then you apply it, you gain more endurance, like longevity within those easier exercises, easier movements, and then you apply more strength. Like, this is that progression. And it gave you 2 progressions. So 2 exercises in the first progression to understand the movement even at a simpler level without your knees and your feet. And then, these are feet apparently. And then brought you up where you can use your knees and your feet. Okay? I didn't include on getting low within that. That's for another day. It's a little bit too complicated with bringing in just 4 exercises. I could talk all day about this shit. But it's how we can wrap it up and use and make sure we're using our glutes to help us. Perfect. Debbie, when's my next live? Usually it's on Tuesday nights. I go over things like these. If you have things that you want to talk about right now, like, let me know. Because this is like how I've designed a lot of my programs, is to help you understand how to move your body and apply it to the bike, and so you can feel stronger out there. It's all like that, the scientific theory behind it. You know, like how is your body moving? What is typically lacking within our motor control patterns? And what can I make you do that increase that motor control pattern so then you can load it and load it further? Yeah. Carrie says, I always have a question about if I'm actually finding the midpoint of the bee stinger. Yes, record yourself, or you can put a weight there. So if you put a weight in the middle, you know that that's too low, and you know that's too high. Oops, because you're dropping the weight off. If you find that middle ground, then you'll know that you're there. Don't drop weights. It sounds loud. Suzanne says, how do I stop breathing? My grip gets too tight. Not focusing on core. That's going to be a lot of the practice off the bike, and then also your confidence level on the bike. Are you nervous about what you're riding? Are you confident about what you're riding? Do you feel loose? Do you feel like you can do? What's your expectation? Like, that goes into that's Pandora's box, Suzanne. But making sure that you're good through this helps eliminate one of those variables. All right, ladies, have a great night.